It was a hectic scene in front of Brian and Nicole Albert's home in Canton, Massachusetts on the morning of January 29th. Police, firefighters, and paramedics all responding because Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found unresponsive on the ground in the snow. Officer O'Keefe had spent the prior evening bar hopping downtown. The Alberts were hosting an after party and had invited John and his girlfriend, Karen Reed. Karen never went inside. She says she dropped John off and went back to his house, then woke up early and began frantically looking for him. Prosecutors say Karen is the one who killed John. They say she ran him over with the back of her car on purpose because their relationship had soured and she was filled with jealous rage. Karen says that's not true and believes it was actually the people inside the house who ambushed John and then framed her for his murder. Tonight we have the latest from court. Then our body language expert will take a look at the testimony. Are witnesses telling the truth or are there signs of deception? We'll break it down as we continue our investigation into the tragic death of Officer John O'Keefe.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. When you think about what happened that morning, this was a very unusual crime scene. Very unusual. We cover a lot of murder trials here on Court TV. We've seen a lot of photos from crime scenes. We've seen a lot of videos from crime scenes, body camera video, dash cam video, etc. And usually there's a victim, there's crime scene tape, and it's a very controlled situation. That's not what we saw here. That's not even close to what happened here. Now, there's several factors going into all of this. Yeah, there was a blizzard that was coming down. The weather was not great, but still, you had a police officer lifeless on the front yard of a home. Yet, this crime scene was not what you would necessarily expect it to look like. Now, there were police everywhere, right? Police at the scene, Canton police. Eventually, Massachusetts State Police come in as well. But there's also police like everywhere. In the house, the Albert house, there are police. Across the street, there's a lieutenant who's got the red Solo cups where the blood evidence is put into. There's officers living in the neighborhood, in their homes. In the home, you know, where the front lawn is, are police officers. I mean, police are everywhere in this story, in this case. Yet, despite that, still, I go back, the crime scene, very unusual. And let's talk about the most important police officer who's there, and that's John O'Keefe. He's the victim here. And John O'Keefe is on the ground, this Boston police officer. And it's his death that needs to be investigated. It's his death that's got to be figured out by everyone that is there. So why is this an unusual crime scene? You would think, in the case of a fallen police officer, that things might even be amped up a little bit in terms of how we are going to run this crime scene and how we're going to run this investigation. And regardless of what you think about what happened that day, this is a problem. Now, I know defense attorneys say this in almost every case, sloppy investigation, etc. But in those cases, you know, they're putting up crime scene tape. There's the CSI comes in. It's a very predictable and organized situation. In the Murdoch case, they were trying to argue that it was chaos at the scene, but it really wasn't. It was very normal the way things were handled in that case. This case, a little different, maybe a lot different. And I don't know if it was the blizzard, I don't know what it was. But it was not your standard crime scene involving the death, and in this case, of a Boston police officer. So that brings us to the ultimate question in this case for Karen Reed. Was she set up or was she caught? Those are the two choices that the jury is really going to have here. right? Either she's caught murdering her boyfriend, caught by an admission that she allegedly made, caught by the damage on her car, caught by the evidence that is left on John O'Keefe's body. Either she's caught by all of that, or she is set up by the people in the house, by responding officers, the police that are everywhere, working together to cover up one set of potential suspects to point the finger directly at her. That's the choice for this jury. Another big day up in Massachusetts. Here are some of the biggest moments from inside that courtroom.
Somebody reading that and seeing a photo of a piece of taillight might believe that that photo is from the same date that you're writing the report, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
You think it's misleading to include a photo on the face sheet of the report when the report is dated January 29th, 2022, and the photo is not from that date, it's from sometime later?
Objection.
Now, you were handed two exhibits or two parts of a report, and you were told to ignore the date that they were printed, correct?
Correct.
And so what, if any, significance would the date that they were printed have in relation to what's on the face sheet?
So in this case, there was supplemental reports done after the 29th.
Here to see blood drops here in the snow, as well as the glass protruding from the snow. Chief Berkowitz brought my attention to a piece of red glass that was about 6 to 8 feet off the into the yard. It was in the vicinity of where Mr. O'Keefe had been discovered.
And, sir, do you again recognize what's up on the screen?
Yes, it's a close-up picture of the piece of plastic.
Did you get out of your car at that point?
I did.
Did you come to Chris's aid by, quote-unquote, activating yourself as an officer?
I got out of my car and I approached the group and I pleaded with them to not fight tonight. I said, there's not going to be a fight tonight.
Did you come to Chris Albert's aid as best you could as a longtime friend of his?
I came to the aid of a citizen who was in fear and of need.
And you engaged in that fight?
Yes.
And again, you had been drinking alcohol at that point, correct?
Correct.
And you were off duty in August of 2002 during this fight?
Yes.
Just like you were off duty in 2022 when you were called by Sergeant Good to activate and come to the crime scene at 34 Fairview.
When Sergeant Good contacted me, I was not working. I was due to work at 7:45 that morning. When Sergeant Good contacted me and told me what was going on, then I activated myself and came to work.
You mentioned Kevin Albert. Who's he?
Kevin Albert is a detective with the Canton Police.
Is he a co-worker?
Yes.
And you're also aware that the reason that your department was ultimately recused from this investigation, Lieutenant Lank, is because of a perceived bias or conflict of interest between the Albert family and the Canton Police Department, correct?
Yes, there was a perceived bias.
Did you ever investigate the foyer area or any other part of the house for evidence of a fight?
The only area I was able to observe at that point, everything appeared to be in order.
But you didn't search the rest of the house for a fight, Lieutenant. That's all I'm asking.
No, I wouldn't have had probable cause to do so.
And joining us now, Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, joining us live outside the courthouse in Dedham, Massachusetts. Matt, great to see you tonight. Let's talk about that witness, Lieutenant Michael Lank. Tell me about his testimony today.
Right, Vinnie, nice to see you as well. Michael Lang with Canton PD. He's a lieutenant.
He is a big witness for the Commonwealth, and he had a big moment in court today that we just played right there. All eyes in the courtroom went over to that witness stand. And remember, the jury, the 17 that are hearing the case right now, they haven't seen much evidence in person. Well, he was handed an evidence box. It had red tape on it. He goes inside, pulls out a bag, and inside that bag, he's using gloves. He pulls out a broken cocktail glass. And he describes to the jury that this was found within feet of O'Keefe's body at the crime scene. And then he also talks about those red plastic pieces that were collected at the crime scene. These were two key pieces of evidence that the Commonwealth had to get in. Now, on the flip side, he also talked about his relationship with the Alberts and indiscretions, according to the defense team, saying that he actually had a situation where he was accused of police misconduct because he helped out Brian Albert's brother, Chris Albert.
Now, Matt, there was also a welfare check that was done for at John's house for the kids, his sister's children that he had been taking over because his sister passed away, sister's husband passed away. He's raising these children, and a welfare check was done.
Right, and this is something that this whole community knew Officer O'Keefe for, is the fact that he brought in his niece and nephew, adopted them after his sister and his brother-in-law had died of cancer. So the chief of police at the time and other people were concerned about the children after John O'Keefe was found dead, or he was pronounced dead at the hospital. So a welfare check was done on his property at his house over at 1 Meadows Avenue, and then they played the video that the officer had, Officer Lieutenant Charles Ray with Canton PD, who was doing that welfare check. They played the video, the dash cam, of him pulling into the driveway where you can see Karen Reed's SUV, and prosecutors pointed out her SUV and the taillights. They didn't get into that testimony just yet. And then you could also see his unit, his car, that was also in that driveway. And what we're expecting next when he's back on the stand tomorrow, more testimony about the taillight. Did he see it cracked? And what did the children say? The niece and nephew, who are on the state's witness list, who are expected to testify about the breakdown of the relationship between John O'Keefe and Karen Reed leading up to his death.
And Matt, that video also interesting because, yeah, you do see John O'Keefe's SUV. So if Karen Reed smashed into his car and cracked her taillight, like the defense says, is there any damage to his tail light in the driveway? I would think the jury would want to see that as well on that video. Let's get to one other point here now. We're watching a lot of these police witnesses, all the responders that came, and that's pretty normal in most cases, but here it's different because these responders, in one fashion or another, are being accused of not being truthful, of perhaps conspiring in all of this. But how about the people in the house? Do we have any idea right now when the people who were inside the house that night will be taking the stand?
Well, the Commonwealth is being very tight-lipped as to who they're going to be calling next. We think that the O'Keefe children are going to be called sometime soon. And as for the folks inside that house, let's put this on your screen because it gets very complex with all of the relationships. So we've already heard about the homeowners, Brian and Nicole Albert. Now, there was testimony from Lank today saying that when he entered the home, they had just looked like they had just woken up and they were asleep during all of this. So we have yet to hear from them. And then Jennifer McCabe, who could be one of the state's star witnesses, she was first to go in that house before investigators after this was a crime scene. And she also called 911, and she was with Karen Reed that morning when John O'Keefe was found, and she was with John O'Keefe the night that they were out drinking. So she's going to be one of the star witnesses that we're waiting to hear from. She was in that house, and she could be testifying soon.
All right, Matt Johnson live in Dedham tonight. Another big day. Thanks so much, Matt. Great to see you. We'll speak again tomorrow, obviously. Let's bring in a special guest joining us right now in Massachusetts. Criminal defense attorney Joseph Krowski Jr. is back with us. All right, Joseph, let me ask you about the people inside the house. Sure. When it is time to take the stand and testify, is it important for the prosecution? Do you think they actually call them? Or do they wait for the defense to try to call them? Is there anything that they need to, like, how is that going to go? does the prosecution go on the defense already and try to get those witnesses out there to disprove any sort of conspiracy, or do they wait for the defense to try to prove some sort of conspiracy?
So I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. Look, I think today was a very, very difficult day for the Commonwealth. You essentially had information that Proctor, who was this conflicted out state trooper, handed off the most integral, important part of the initial stages of the investigation to a police department that had, quote, perceived bias and was ill-equipped, ill-trained, and ill-prepared to do the investigation. I think that came out pretty powerfully. So the defendant opened up with the word that there was a frame job in the opening statement. And now I think it's been a difficult couple of days. So the Commonwealth is going to have to call at least, I think, Brian Albert, because his name has been mentioned a lot. I think they're probably going to have to call Jen McCabe and maybe Brian Higgins. Strategically, they may call other witnesses to say, I was in there, never saw John O'Keefe, never saw a fight. I was in there, nothing happened. Or they may hold back and use them in rebuttal. But certainly, there's been enough of that theme consistent throughout that we're going to hear from some of those civilians in the House. Now, the defense, when it's their turn, might call some, might call none, but I think they'd be smarter to play it down the middle like they've been playing it and focus on Proctor. What I think is shaping up, not a cover-up to, not a conspiracy to cover up a murder, but perhaps a conspiracy amongst law enforcement to kind of minimize what would surely be terrible PR fallout about a bunch of officers out drinking on a snow night, and lo and behold,
and then responding to the scene. Great point.
Right, exactly.
Joseph Krowski Jr. staying with us. We've got more to get to. We're going to take a look at some of the body language of the witnesses. Is there anything that shows possible deception? Plus, coming up next hour.
When Lori's children were reported missing, law enforcement started taking a much closer look at what was going on. Tonight, more insight into the doomsday world of Chad and Lori with secret recordings.
Did law enforcement end up asking for your assistance?
Yes.
As part of that, did they ask you to record conversations?
Yes.
This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Prosecutors say she ran him over on purpose and left him to die in the cold.
But Reed claims that she's being framed.
It smells suspicious.
After years of legal fireworks, will the truth finally be revealed?
The end game is to figure out who killed John O'Keefe and hold these people responsible.
The Killer or Cover-Up Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
No.
Late last night, we received another photo where Katie McLaughlin and Caitlin Albert are standing next to each other in a photo at a baby shower in June of 2021, about 8 months before John O'Keefe's death. It's very clear to us that Katie McLaughlin perjured herself.
Allegations of perjury by the defense. Wow. That's a big accusation, but I think it's the basis of the whole case is that people aren't being honest about what really happened here. So let's take a little closer look right now. Still with me, criminal defense attorney Joseph Krowski Jr. and joining us, jury consultant, human behavior expert Susan Constantine. Thank you both. All right, let's watch a little bit of Katie McLaughlin's testimony, the one who's been accused of perjury. And it really, I think, this part of her testimony is what they're talking about, which is her relationship with Caitlin Albert, who is the daughter of the homeowner where John O'Keefe's body is found. So let's watch it and then tell me if you see anything that indicates deception.
Ms. McLaughlin, who's Caitlin Albert?
I went to high school with somebody named Caitlin Albert.
Somebody named Caitlin Albert.
I went to high school with somebody named Caitlin Albert.
So do you know Caitlin Albert?
I do.
You're friends with Caitlin Albert?
I would say more acquaintances, not close friends.
Okay, Susan, it looks like there's a lot there. What are you seeing?
Why didn't she just say that right out front, why didn't you just say that she was friends with him or acquaintance with him? Why did she have to skirt around that? That bothered me a little bit. You know, she's a little bit nervous, which you would expect someone to be, especially when the spotlight is on her. This is not a comfortable place for her to be. But I didn't see any overt deceptive indicators. We looked for them in clusters and attached to a stimulus. So hers was really very more expressive, some frustration, some questioning. Her, her body language is leaning forward. So she is in what we call a truth zone and how she's responding. So I think it's what we're looking at is more some emotional displays that she's feeling inward, but I don't think that she's being out and out deceptive.
All right, Joseph, Susan, let's watch now the testimony. This is really the important part. This is the testimony where she's talking about an alleged confession made by Karen Reed. Let's watch this.
She answered who the patient was, his birthday. I think she answered maybe some of those initial medical questions that I asked. But as I said, she's very distraught. She was kind of moving around the scene a little bit. So I was just kind of following her, and then we came to a stop at one point, and I continued to ask one more question.
What was that one more question?
So at that point, I asked her if there had been any significant trauma that happened before this.
What, if anything, did she say?
So she said, I hit him. She repeated it. There was a woman standing across from her who I believe at that point said, you're hysterical. You need to calm down. You're hysterical. She repeated, I hit him. And there was a police officer who was in that vicinity kind of with us who replied, you what? She repeated it one more time. And that officer then signaled to somebody, get Goody down here, which I'm assuming would be the sergeant.
All right, before we hear your analysis, Susan, Joseph, from your perspective, right? You've been in the trenches for 25 years doing this. Is this a strong witness?
Look, you got to imagine being in the courtroom. It's much different than watching it on TV and monitors. The stress and the pressure and the tension is palpable. And this is not a professional witness, right? It's an EMT. So the defense did what they're supposed to do, right? They went after what they perceived to be the weakest point, is the bias. I didn't think it was necessarily a bombshell. I think I said this before. Saying your acquaintances, well, maybe not the best answers. Really a textbook definition of what she is. She's in a friend group with her, hadn't seen her a lot. They were acquaintances. Unlike some of the police witnesses who certainly appear more biased, she seemed to maintain her composure, and her demeanor was fairly even-tempered. Now, the judge is going to tell the jury. It's not just what a witness says, it's how they say it, and it's fair game to judge their demeanor. So, I thought she was a pretty good witness for the Commonwealth.
Okay, Susan.
Okay, so there's one area that I wanted to point out, and it was regarding the trauma. Right before that, when she was asked the question about something significant, and then she talked about the trauma. You saw an eye shutter, which is where the eyes close. You see a clenched jaw, which is really interesting. You see this tension that builds right up at the very end of that statement, and then she swallows right after it. I want to know more why that hot spot was there, because tension is an indicator of some sort of intense stressor. I want to know why she's feeling that at that exact moment, because she didn't show that throughout some of her other comments. So this was significant. That definitely was a hot spot. I want to know more.
And clearly her most important testimony in the case, by far. Okay, there was another firefighter who responded, Anthony Flamati. He's I think the head of the paramedics there. He also allegedly heard a confession. Let's watch him.
The only response that I was personally given was just, I hit him. Oh my God, I hit him.
And when she's saying, I hit him, oh my God, I hit him, how loudly is she saying that?
So she was within 2 feet of me, but very loud. Any type of follow-up questioning, did you hit him with your hand? Did you kick him? What happened? She just repeated the phrase over and over again, I hit him, I hit him.
Susan, what do you think of him?
Okay, so there's, first of all, it jumps from we to I. So I think that there's a collaboration of opinion, and they must have talked between some of the police officers, because he switched from we to I. It should have been, you know, I, we, so myself and others. So I'm a little concerned about that. The other thing is that his eyes are straight ahead. Sometimes just goes from side to side. So he's talking about what he heard. So that would be consistent with something as auditory. The thing is, he's got some small little, what we call exasperation. You can see this kind of in his corner dimplers right here. So, but overall, that is not significant enough, Vinnie, for me to say that he's being deceptive. I think exasperated, I think frustrated, but I do think that there is a collaboration between all of those witnesses, that they're kind of sticking to the same story.
All right, Joseph Krosky, I'll give you the final word on this. We have about 40 seconds.
Just quick, I want to be respectful to your guest, but, you know, this is really pseudoscience. This isn't admissible in court.
It's not admissible in court, but trust me. Trust me, we had a track record here.
Right, but it's not peer reviewed, and there's a reason it's not admissible in court. You have to know not just the physiology, but people react different under different circumstances. So it's just too imprecise. So I caution reading too much into someone clenching a jaw or blinking an eye or overlapping or inversing an I or a we. And that's no disrespect to your guest, but I just think the Proctor testimony was a lot more compelling that came out, that he called off state police from showing up to the scene today.
Gotcha. Susan, I got to give you a response there, obviously.
Okay, so I would really suggest you take my course in How to Spot a Liar in 7 Seconds or Less, because it's deeply rooted with the American Psychological Association manual about this big, breaking it all down. But I respect my colleague. Bless you, my friend.
And we can disagree without being disagreeable. Yeah. That's why I love Joseph Krosky Jr. and Susan Constantine. Thank you both so much. When we come back, perhaps some more disagreements on the program as we take a look at the dash cam. What does it tell us?
You wrote in that report, quote, Karen Reed kept screaming, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" She was severely distraught and not able to tell me what happened. Correct?
That's correct.
May I approach?
Yes.
There was no limit to the amount of words that you could put on the page, correct?
No.
Matter of fact, there's a ton of white space that's left unutilized, right?
That's correct.
You could have taken as much time as you wanted to in writing this report. Is that right?
Sure.
And it was, is that yes?
Yes.
There was no reason to abbreviate anything. Is that right?
No.
And you tried to be as accurate as you possibly could in that moment?
Yes.
And put everything down in that report that reflected what you experienced and what you observed and what you heard that morning, correct?
Yes.
And the only statement you attribute to my client on that morning, just hours after the incident or minutes after the incident, was she kept repeating, "Is he dead?" Correct?
Yes.
That's the first officer to respond to the scene. The first officer. Significant what he hears, what he doesn't hear, what he writes down, what he doesn't write down. I want to show you from his dash cam the moment he is arriving and what you see on that dash cam. This is at 6:09 a.m. You look to the left, Kerry Roberts, Jennifer McCabe, Karen Reed, hunched over. You can see the location of where John O'Keefe is based upon where they are. Close to that flagpole, a lot closer to the flagpole than to the fire hydrant that we keep hearing about, which looks like the fire hydrant's the bottom left, a little tip of it you might see there. So I want to roll this video now so you can see what is happening as Officer Asaraf arrives as the first responding officer at 6:09. And I want to bring in our guests joining us right now, Nick Rocco, Kevin Lenahan. Nick Rocco, Karen Reed supporter, Karen Reed expert, and Kevin, the YouTube creator behind the Yellow Cottage Tales. So as we're watching this video together, Nick, what do you see as the significant part of this video, the first video of the scene at 6:09?
Well, Jen McCabe was in the vehicle, and it was Kerry Roberts and Karen Reed who was giving CPR. Jen McCabe was on the cell phone calling 911. And that is how the first 911 call came out, was we heard John's voicemail, because when Karen was arriving on scene, she was calling John. She sees John outside, she drops the phone, and ultimately it's leaving a voicemail. So it picks up Jennifer McCabe. And after she calls 911, like I said before, she notifies her sister on a 9-second phone call that something's going on outside. So they knew inside the house.
Her sister, who is where? Inside the home?
Inside the house, correct.
Okay, Kevin, as we're watching this video, what do you see as the significant part of what's happening, the dynamics here at the scene from the beginning?
Well, firstly, I don't see anything suspicious on the part of any of these three women here that we could read into this, right? I mean, Karen is obviously hysterical and understandably so. When you go back a little moment before to when you were showing they were approaching, that was interesting, because even with the spotlight that the officer is shining, you can barely see those three women over John. So you can imagine that when the three women were coming in the dark, it is kind of surprising that Karen was able to spot them. But I want to just add one more thing. What Nick said here is false. The idea that Jen called inside the house and alerted them, there's no evidence of that at all. The call connected for 8 seconds, that's called voicemail. That's all it is. Jen tried to call her sister twice, understandably, and tried to call her brother-in-law. And then when she couldn't get through to them, at 12:34, she goes over into the house and goes up to the second floor and wakes them up. Those calls did not connect.
You hear her speaking to somebody. You hear her.
You do not. Nope. I'll tell you what you hear. I've heard the audio. What you hear is you're listening that is being recorded through Karen's phone lying on the back seat. And yes, you hear Jen's voice trail off, but that's because after she makes the 911 call, she's leaving the car and walking over to the scene with John. So it's the distancing between her and Karen's phone that makes it seem to other people like she's whispering. No, it's just distancing. That's all it is.
So what you two are talking about, I just want to clarify for everyone at home. Nick, you're referencing a recording that is on John O'Keefe's voicemail made by Karen Reed as they're pulling up. She's calling the voicemail, drops the phone, runs out of the car, and that's the recording that picks up what you believe Jennifer McCabe is making phone calls to her sister inside the home.
I mean, she did make the phone call. It's on her phone records. Yeah. She made a call.
Okay, let's get to our next video here. And here you've got on the stand Anthony Flamati. He's a firefighter, Canton Department, the head guy. Let's take a listen to him describing what he did when he got to the scene.
So CPR was initiated by me and ALS assessment as well.
So initially when you go over to Mr. O'Keefe, how many other people are sort of in that area at that time?
So in the area we have the first responders, and then we have the two female parties on scene.
Where were the two females in relation to Mr. O'Keefe?
So as we're approaching the scene, they were kind of in between us and the patient, so we tried to gather as much information as we could from them as we could.
What, if anything, did you observe Ms. Reed or any of the females doing with reference to Mr. O'Keefe's body when you first started to come up to the scene?
So I would characterize it as an attempted resuscitation. She was attempting to do CPR, but due to their erratic behavior, she was running back and forth between the other female on scene and the body, back and forth, trying to press on his chest, wake him up, talk to him, just to no avail.
And as far as your conversation with Ms. Reed, what, if any, questions did you ask in regard to either demographics or anything else?
So do you have any information of who this is? How are they here? Tried to get any type of information we could from her at that time, but with no luck.
When you say with no luck, what, if any response did you receive from Ms. Reed in regard to your question?
So the only response that I was personally given was just, I hit him, oh my God, I hit him.
Okay, so let's take a look at Officer Sarif's dash cam, and there's a first responder there to the left. You can see the flagpole, right? That's a landmark there. Performing CPR on John O'Keefe. Karen Reed is over to the right. So as we watch this video, you have first responder doing CPR, then John O'Keefe is ultimately put on a stretcher and taken away. As we watch that video together, the question is, Kevin Lenahan, at what point do you believe Karen Reed spoke to Anthony Flammati?
You know, it's hard to say. There are multiple witnesses, enough witnesses that I don't think there's any question that she said something to that effect. I've never put too much stock into what it meant because she is hysterical. But I think it's important to point out that if you take it in terms of a larger pattern, it might become more meaningful. So, for instance, this past summer, her father on national TV, and this is months after they were trying to promote the third-party culprit theory, her father made a point of saying on national TV after weeks of practicing, preparing for that at the hospital, Karen said, I backed into something. So I think this, to me, really at the heart of what the strategy will be at the end of the day is to try to show that she didn't do it on purpose, because the physical evidence is always going to connect to John's injuries.
Nick, what are your thoughts about this alleged confession made at the scene to Anthony Flammati?
If this man really heard her say that and he did not report it to any...
Nick Rocco, speechless, first time ever. His connection has frozen on us, Kevin. We're going to see if we can defrost that and get him going again. But this video, and I think you make a good point, Kevin, that Karen Reed, regardless of what you think she did or did not do here, is clearly very agitated in a way that it looks like she is the most affected compared to anyone else at the scene that morning.
Yeah, and for all kinds of reasons. She's losing someone she loves, right? If she knows in her mind that she did this, she knows that her future freedom is in jeopardy. So there's all kinds of reasons that she would be hysterical in that moment.
All right, let's get to our next video that we have, and this is Jennifer McCabe. We flash forward now, 6:34 a.m. You see Kerry Roberts, you see Jennifer McCabe. The difference, you need to watch Jennifer McCabe, because as we watch this video, she is then going to go inside the home. Let's take a look at that video as we roll it. And I think Nick is back with us now. If Nick is back with us, Nick, your thoughts here as we watch the image of Jennifer McCabe going into the house. Why is this significant?
Can you hear me, Vinnie?
I can hear you. Why?
Right, so
go ahead. Why is Jennifer McCabe going into the house significant?
It's significant because she's going to tell her brother-in-law and sister that, you know, there's this event going outside. And she's in there for about 5 or 6 minutes before all of a sudden the lights come on. And it's convenient because all the fire departments are gone, all the paramedics are gone, and the ones on scene are the Canton Police Department, which have the connections to the Alberts. You have Kevin Albert being a Canton cop. You have Lieutenant Lank, who has helped the Alberts. And not to mention, when Jennifer McCabe started interviewing with Michael Lank, when he came inside that house, her BPM skyrocketed to 122 beats per minute. That is almost a heart attack. I mean, this woman was nervous. 122 beats per minute. That is absurd.
Let's take a look now. We've got 6:39. You mentioned when the light goes on. It's 6:39 a.m. is when the light goes on the Albert home. At that point, Lieutenant Michael Lank is on a phone call that lasts about 5 minutes. I want to take a listen to some of the testimony from Lieutenant Lank about that phone call.
You would agree with me that that was, without counting the seconds, that was about a 5-minute phone call, or maybe a little better than 5 minutes?
I wasn't watching, to be honest.
Do you have any idea who you were talking to now that you've seen that?
I could make an educated guess, but I don't know for sure.
So when the only parties left at the scene are members of the Albert family, Jen McCabe, and the Canton Police Department representatives, that's when the lights inside 34 Fairview finally came on.
Okay.
Is that yes?
Yes.
All right, Kevin, I'll begin with you. Are you concerned that he doesn't recall who he was speaking to for 5 minutes on the phone outside of the house?
You know, you can possibly start to build suspicion around something like that, but he said that I could make an educated guess, so he probably has an idea. And I just also want to respond to something that Nick said. So Jennifer's heart rate was absolutely normal at the after-hours party. I think it was about 68 or something like that. It was absolutely normal when she went home and was supposedly making these strange Google searches. It only elevated at the scene where her friend was found dead or dying. So it was completely normal. And it would have been unnormal, it would have been very unnatural if she didn't go into the house to wake up her sister after finding him out there and after being unable to reach them on the phone. She goes into the house at 12:34. The light we see go on there is the porch light. So she's in the house for 5 minutes. Unfortunately, the dash cam doesn't have the bedroom window, which is on the far end of the house on the second floor. She goes up in there, wakes them up. My guess is if the dash cam reached that, we'd see the light go on in there. It takes a few minutes to get dressed, and then you come down.
Do we know how she got in the home? Was it locked? Unlocked?
I don't know.
Maybe she has a key? I don't know. I think we're out of time. Are we out of time? We are out of time tonight, folks, but we'll do it again. Nick Rocco, Kevin Lenahan, thank you both so much. Appreciate it. We'll see you again next time.